Rise Up Radio. Our mission is simple.
To connect,
Inspire,
impact,
transform.
We will connect with our city's people and businesses.
Inspire all of us to achieve our dreams.
Transform the city by focusing on the resilience of our people.
And positively impact all who live and work here.
Rise Up believes our city is a city on the rise.
And all of us need to broadcast just how truly amazing this city is.
Welcome to the show. This is Tom Chester, your host for Rise Up Radio and Business Innovators Radio. We are here today in Dallas, Texas. Matter of fact, it's raining in Dallas, but we can get through that. Talking with our special guest, and also she is going to be my co-host today, and this is Susan Hamilton, founder and CEO of OffBeat Business Media. So we are here to promote the two-day event happening in Fort Worth, Texas on August the 30th through the 31st at the Birchman Baptist Church located at 9100 North Normandale Street in Fort Worth, Texas. This event will be starting at 8 a.m. and it's entitled Developing a Bulletproof Mind and a Bulletproof Heart. Susan Hamilton will MC the event, and OffBeat Business Media is covering the presentations and the interview. Hey, Susan, you're my guest host on here, so welcome to the show, and we're going to introduce your special person today.
Hi. Thank you, Tom. I'm so thrilled to have an opportunity to talk with you all and to bring you some really great perspective about this event and how this is going to benefit the community. You know, I don't know of another event where we have an opportunity to reach our first responders and also reach the community, pull them together, sit them down next to each other to get some of the same information necessary for us to really have a faster response to the escalated violence in our communities, and then also faster recovery for our first responders. So today, I'm going to be talking with Ricky Sluder, who has over 20 years of combined experience as a criminal investigator in Dallas County. He was a CMS program integrity manager, fraud detection expert, and consultant. He's investigated thousands of criminal cases in his career, from crimes against persons to property crimes, and has well over $1 billion in healthcare fraud prosecutions to his credit. So right now, Ricky Sluder is a certified fraud examiner. He's the vice president in healthcare program integrity practice at ESL, a worldwide leader in advanced analytics and consulting. Hi, Ricky. So glad that you're joining us today.
Hey, Susan. Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you too, Tom.
Oh, welcome to the show. I know that Susan's got a lot of questions to ask you. We're going to find out a lot of very important information from you and be able to, promote our event.
Wonderful. When I met the Blue Dragon consultants and started recognizing the level of training that they were bringing to the community and bringing to our first responders, whether that's officers or firefighters or security, it really blew my mind. There was a lot of things about having a career in law enforcement, being willing to be on those front lines, that the American public, I don't think, really recognizes or understands. I think it's important because we're all going to the grocery store together. Our kids are on the same bus. We're walking down we're in the same classrooms together. And with such an escalated violence in our communities today, I think we need to do a better job of communication from the community level to the first responder level. And so I'm really thrilled to hear the perspective of someone who's had so much history in Dallas County. You've seen a few things, haven't you, Ricky?
Yes. I'm excited to share my perspective. One as a civilian, one as an EMT before I became a police officer, and then during my law enforcement career, to kind of give some perspective on how events that happen in society have an effect on our head and on our heart as officers, and how we really need the community to rally around us and give us the encouragement, I think, that we all seek in a very discouraging world.
That's so important for us to understand. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about what you have seen in the community? As far as, would you agree that it's possible that we've got some opinions really on both sides, from the law enforcement side to the community side. Would you say that maybe we've been callous with some of the recent events?
I definitely believe that, we all have individual bias. It doesn't mean that our bias is necessarily a wrong form of bias, but it does imply that we have bias because we can only see the world through our social lens. We're not able to necessarily walk in the shoes of someone else as we like to say we should do. And because we see the world a certain way, we're going to come at an incident that happens that we're presented on the news with a particular opinion. And that opinion is entirely colored by the bias that we hold relative to that incident.
There's a lot of, there's this idea that the color of our skin really makes us more vulnerable. There's this idea that our zip code can make us more vulnerable. And indeed, sometimes that's actually true. So it can also make it harder for an officer to really make those judgment calls when they're on the scene and how they process the whole circumstance even after those moments when we're connected. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing on that social level.
Yeah, so I'll take you back in time to when I was 18 years old, and I was going through my EMT training. And I'll never forget it. We hopped in an ambulance. We drove down to the farmer's market to buy a watermelon because we were going to have a really good, delicious lunch in between the calls for service that we were handling that day. And a man had unfortunately hanged himself from a tree off of Harwood in downtown Dallas. And I remember seeing him hanging there, and there was, kind of a crowd gathering around, checking him out. And the firefighters went up and had to cut him down. And it was a bit of a tragic scene because he, careened down to the ground, and it wasn't something that you'd want to see. I'll put it that way. And the more senior people who were there on the scene began to laugh about what had happened when he hit the ground. And I'm young. I'm a baby. Wow. And I was not laughing. My heart was breaking because of what I was watching, and I didn't understand what each of these men did understand. And as we got back in the ambulance, my lead paramedic recognized that what I just saw really bothered me. And he leaned over and he said, "Ricky, I want you to understand something. You'll learn to laugh or you will cry. And if you cry, you'll never make it in this business. You got to learn to laugh, kid." And it wasn't that I had to learn to laugh at people. It was that I had to learn to laugh to keep my sanity.
That turned out to be a coping mechanism with you that has lasted you for so many years now. And the thing that I really respect you come out on a scene, I come out on a scene, I'm a standby, you're the law enforcement, you're the person there to handle it, and you have to evaluate this thing from so many different angles. You have to evaluate what's happening, who's there at the scene, is everybody safe, not safe? I mean, to process what you guys must go through emotionally and mentally and psychologically and all that stuff, man, I tell you what, I can see the need here for us to understand that and almost feel that with the officers and the first responders that are out there. And I think that's one thing about this event that I think I'm going to like the most is the fact that I will get to experience what's behind your shield and what's behind these first responders when they're out there doing what they have to do.
Yeah, that's so true.
Absolutely. And I think that what you said, Tom, I love that phrase, what's going on behind the shield. That's a very impactful phrase, because we are expecting our officers to go from scenarios like that right into the next scenario. And where you and I might go through one thing and be traumatized and need to go seek some therapy or get some help, or even just take a couple days off and take a deep breath. Oh, wow, what did I just go through, right? Our officers are expected to get right back on the job in 24, 48 hours, not necessarily having had an opportunity to process it through the channels that need to just be gone through, but also through their family, right? Because now they may be going home to a family. Can they necessarily be talking about that? I'm hearing from the officers that are in the field. They're telling me that they can't be talking about this stuff at home. They can't be scaring their spouses or their children. And so a lot of times that's bottled up.
Oh, Susan, that is so true. So taking you back again, when I saw that man hang himself, within a 12-hour period, I saw my first two people in a public safety capacity who were dead. One from a car accident, where couldn't save the man's life. He expired on us. And this other man who had, like I said, had hanged himself. So in a 12-hour period, I'm 18 years old, and I encounter two deaths, and not one person ever asked me, how are you? It was the expectation that you're going to be okay because you chose this career. So I hate to say it this way, but toughen up and let's keep moving. That's why you got to learn to laugh.
Wow, that's valuable information. We never realize what is actually going on and what you guys do go through and how you cope with those. And how does it affect your life down the road, and how does that affect your family and stuff?
Tom, that's a great question. I think the thing that we tend to forget about our men and women in uniform is that, and whether they're a paramedic, whether they're in the ER, whether they're a police officer, and even our soldiers, is that these are people who are men, they are women, they are husbands, they are wives, they are fathers, they're sons and daughters, right? They're people. And for myself, as an example, I woke up one morning and I was told by a doctor that my soon-to-be born daughter had all kinds of health problems, heart defects, and, was told to abort my own child. That was what they told us to do. We didn't do that, but that was the news that I got on a certain morning. Then I had to go to work and deal with my community and see atrocities that were going on. Meanwhile, my perspective is being colored by the fact that I have my own atrocities going on in my own life. And yet somehow I am supposed to be able to manage all of that and keep a smile on my face and be kind to everyone. And I can tell you that that's just not always possible. And yet that's not something that I can go and talk about either. I can't go to my chief or my lieutenant or my sergeant and say, hey, I'm having a rough day and I really can't handle what the community is going to throw at me today. So I just need to take a break and somebody needs to feel sorry for me and give me a hug. That conversation is not going to happen. And whenever I do get out there and I have to, involve myself or I have to use force or something else, and I have this stuff going on in the back of my head and in my heart, that's going to color how I potentially handle a situation. But again, I can't use that as a defense for my actions, is to say that, well, I was maybe a little bit hard-handed with that person because, hell, I've got all this stuff going on in my world and I'm a freaking train wreck right now. That's not permissible.
Go ahead, Susan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wanted to know, Ricky, what if you could talk to your superior and have a conversation that is healthier? Do you see an environment where if that conversation was encouraged and actually had, that it would make a difference then in that space? I mean, do you think that that's something that we should be looking at doing a little bit better?
I think overall departments really care about their officers. The people who decide to go into this career go into it with very little hope of being able to make their ends meet, right? Most of us have to work 2 and 3 jobs to really have a decent life. And so, there's a certain cut of cloth that makes these people. And up into the upper echelon of the department, they care about their officers. And I think on a human level, we want to be able to care about them, but we get, I think, myopic. And I think we get myopic from a department level that, you signed up to be a foot soldier. You signed up to be the sheepdog. And you can't get soft on me now, kid. So toughen up and let's get out there and let's go seek justice for our community. We've got to be the one who stands in the gap. And you can't be weak when you stand in the gap. And so there's a certain level of bravado, I think, that kind of comes along with the duty and the role. And it's not that we don't care about what's going on in Ricky's world. Okay. It's not that we don't care about what's happening to Ricky's child. But you know what? There's a job to be done. And there's people running away from a building right now because we have a barricaded subject. And there's no time for Ricky to run away. Ricky's got to go charge into that building and take care of business. And so we sometimes overshadow the personal lives of the officer and what they're going through with what the community is facing, and when the officer has to put aside his or her own issues and fears and deal with the atrocity that's taking place in that moment. Now, once that moment is over, the problem is that you have another moment, and then you have another moment, and we're not dealing with those moments ex post facto or after the fact. That's where I think the departments really need to rally around their officers and have an understanding of what's really going on in their officers' lives, and then what are they being exposed to on the job. And if they are being exposed to things and their judgment is being colored by their personal life or by what's happening, in their day-to-day work life, let's get them somebody to talk to so they can have a healthy perspective on that, as opposed to making them bottle it up and hold it inside and then potentially do something that's completely out of color and out of character and without judgment because they do have so much stuff bottled up inside of them. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and it tells me that, the concern is out there, and largely, the media has propagated a lot of that because it gets that information. We want to see and know all the injustices, right? That makes news, that makes headlines, and so when we're talking about this community level, we might see a knee-jerk reaction out there or something that we perceive it to be a knee-jerk reaction. That's not necessarily so. There could have been a zillion other pieces, but you're only getting that snapshot. And if we can do a better job of communicating with what the officers are experiencing and what the community is witnessing, I think what we're going to end up being able to do here is a lot of healing, because after all, we are all occupying the same community. We want that to be a kinder place, right? We want that to be a protected place. We don't want to have these scenarios where an officer does not respond or doesn't respond to the level that we need him to do because they don't feel like they're going to necessarily get backed up, right, either by the community or even possibly with their very own department. Have you ever seen those types of cases, Ricky?
Yes, Susan. When I was a younger officer in uniform, I remember distinctly putting myself in some situations, and even as I was more of a veteran officer, putting myself in situations where truly I probably would have been justified to use deadly force, but I consciously elected not to, and I chose a less lethal option, i.e. I fought the person, because I really didn't feel like if I had discharged my weapon that I would have been that my department would have had my back. And a lot of that, I think, would have been promulgated by community pressure. So I think there's officers out there, and I know I've talked to some, that they have been in very similar situations where it's like, I don't feel like that the department's policy is for me. I feel like the department policy is there to hang me whenever I screw up. And some days I feel damned if I do and damned if I don't. So it's an unfortunate reality that we face when we have people who are those foot soldiers serving as judge, jury, and executioner in certain situations that, they have to make a decision about in a microcosm, and that the rest of us have weeks, months, and years to debate.
So true. So true. So when we're looking at this event coming up in Fort Worth, you've had a chance to kind of to look this over a little bit. What do you think are some of the things that get you excited about attending, Ricky?
Well, I love the fact that we're talking about the elephant in the room. This has been kind of like, this issue has kind of been like that family member that we all have that nobody wants to talk about. And, we've got to shine the light on the fact that we are people in this business, and there are things out there that we see day in and day out, and I don't care how tough you are, these things at some point are going to bring you to your knees, and they're going to impact your life, and they're going to impact your marriage, and they're going to impact your heart and how it colors and shapes everything about you as a human being. So I'm excited that this training is being offered, and that our officers maybe can kind of take a sigh of relief and go, wow, you know what? I'm normal because I feel these things, and I don't want to talk about it because I don't want anybody to tell me I'm not fit for duty.
I love that. Thank you so much, Ricky. I've got one other question about the event, because I personally think it's pretty exciting, and Tom and I were talking about this earlier. But the fact that spouses get in free, we can get so much more bang for the buck. We can get spouses to come in free and understand and start building a little better communication bridge, as you mentioned, even in the family. How do you see that as a benefit to this training?
I think that is absolutely crucial. So I'll be vulnerable for a minute and tell you that I'm twice divorced. And I'll tell you that there are many people who are in this profession who are very similar or not dissimilar to me, where they have had multiple marriages that have failed. Maybe it's by no fault of the profession, but the profession is sometimes referred to as a mistress because we tend in this business to be very much involved in what we do. Now, with that said, when I was a detective, I was on call 24/7, 365 until I got called out 4 years in a row on Valentine's Day. Well, my ex-spouse began to question, am I really getting called out or am I going to see somebody else, right? And when I would come home, 12, 13 hours later from processing some gruesome crime scene, the first question out of her mouth was, what did you get called out for? Now, the first thing that I told her was, you don't want to know what I just saw. And I don't want to talk about it.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
And the problem with that is now all of a sudden I have created a wall with my spouse where my job is more important than she is. And a marriage is not going to survive. So if we're involving spouses and they're able to come and they're able to not only network and understand perspective of other spouses to see that they're not alone, to see that this is something that is part and parcel to the blue curtain, as we call it, the thin blue line, that, that other officers are facing these same issues, and maybe it can help them understand that there are just certain things about the officer that they don't know how to process it, and they don't want to come home and start talking to you about how some small child was murdered and mutilated, because nobody wants to talk about that kind of stuff. And maybe that will help these people from self-imploding and creating problems within their relationships that lead to divorces and lead to, quite honestly, problems within the department and possibly problems within the community. Because why? Again, those personal things are always going to shape and color our perspective on the job. It's impossible for it not to.
This whole event is to train, prepare, assist, encourage, repair the men and women who fight these fires and fight this terrorism and fight and run into danger all the time. While me, I'm headed to the back door. They're having to head in, But the thing about this, we want the spouses there to learn. We want the police officers to learn, the first responders. They're going to have training. All this is really for you guys. But, as a business owner and as the John Q public out there, I think this is one of the most valuable things that you guys could have ever done for us. Because in this situation, we don't see it the way everybody else sees it because we're not in the feet of these officers. So having the opportunity to open this up to the community and let them see firsthand what's going on behind these minds and what's happening, I think is important because we are now facing as a community the need to be involved. We didn't used to think we need to be involved, but today with everything that's going on from the mass murdering, the school shootings, and everything that's been happening, the community needs to step up, and we need to support those people that are in front of us taking care of these situations, but we need to also know what's going on with their lives. And by bridging this gap, you're going to make a huge step for the community to understand. So I'm hoping and praying that, all the community shows up. And then also, for the business angle of this thing, we want support. We want to participate. We want to help out the people that are doing this noble deed, whether we're sponsoring them with money or, you guys come out to our businesses. You come out to our businesses when we call you, when we need you, when we want you there, but we want to be there for you because you were there for us. So I think this event is going to be, so different sided and so the perspective of this thing is going to be so humongous that it's just going to be overwhelming to us as the community and to businesses to get behind you, to hear, to see, to feel, to understand. And that's my perspective on this whole thing. And that's why I'm so glad that I'm having this opportunity to broadcast it everywhere, to get it seen and heard everywhere, because this is something we all need to know and to participate. Am I right?
Tom, you couldn't be more right.
Tom, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to touch on something, Tom, if I may, and that is what you pointed out is so true. And I'm going to color it with two things. One, as police officers, we're trained in community policing, right? That's something that kind of grew as a firestorm, and we're all supposed to be understanding of our community and learn your beat and learn the people who are in your beat so you can make wise police choices. But yet we don't teach the community about policing. Why is that? Right? And so I strongly encourage the community to come out and really learn about policing and what it's really about, as opposed to what maybe you hear on the 5, 6, 8, 10 o'clock news about something that happened, and get the Paul Harvey version of the story as opposed to the sound clip or the nugget of information that made a good headline, right? The second thing that I want to touch on, just kind of to fill this out, is that I was working one time off duty, and I was in a very bad neighborhood, and I had to arrest a man. And after I took him into custody and handed him over to actually Fort Worth PD at the time, a lady walked up to me and began to read me the riot act. How dare I, disenfranchise this poor man? Obviously, he was probably just, stealing meat because he's hungry, and telling me everything I'm doing is wrong. I didn't open my big mouth. I just listened to her. And when she got done chewing me out, I asked her, I said, well, I'm curious, what should I be doing if what I'm doing here is wrong? And she said, well, you should be dealing with real crimes, and you should find people out there who are killing people and raping children. And she made her case. And I said, okay. I said, well, would you like to know what this man actually did? And she said, I'd love to know why it was that you arrested him. And I said, he was wanted for murder. And she just looked at me.
Wow.
And I said, so what you just said was the case of what I was doing right, but yet you just chewed me out telling me I was doing it wrong. I said, so you see, maybe you don't know all the facts. And we parted company. Point is that as a community, we can look through our social lens of bias and we can see things that are going on. But until we have all the evidence out there, we shouldn't arrive at a verdict about what happened.
Oh, yeah, that is excellent. Tom, I'm so glad you went there, guys, because that's exactly it. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really thrilled about inviting our school districts and inviting participants from city councils and from our school districts to better understand that as well. We all need to have just a higher education in this area, and with the local businesses behind that, helping to fund this through those ticket purchases, through sponsoring an officer, and knowing full well that when they sponsor that officer for $99, that their spouse gets in free. And all of a sudden, we've got this comfortable event in an uncomfortable situation, talking about difficult things that are really going to help us to build bridges and have a stronger community overall. Just really grateful for this conversation and the ability to just share those perspectives with our audience. Thank you so much for that.
Let's talk about the event it's going to have. Let's give the details again. Once again, it's going to be a 2-day event, right, Susan? Tell me about that again. 2-day event.
Wonderful. We've got a 2-day event coming up that is absolutely jam-packed with some of the best talent out there. So we've got Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman helping us understand. He's got an international expert on sheepdog, which is actually how do we do a better job protecting the people in our community, recognizing those danger signals earlier, right, and stopping them faster. We've got, he'll be doing a keynote there, so will Tom Ziegler, who is the son of Zig Ziglar, and he's bringing a Born to Win, a Live to Win program that he's modified specifically to help the officers' families. How beautiful is that? Which I think is going to be really great for the community to hear, right? To hear how can we support the community as well. We do need to know all of those things. We've got retired Sergeant Richard Morris, who's got 35 years as the head of the Violent Task Force over in Fort Worth. And on top of that, he's a 10th degree black belt, and he has dedicated his life. He's got every single one of these speakers has so much history. It's mind-boggling to me that you can live so much. It really is, and have so much to share, so much history and experience and expertise, and professional speakers that know how to convey that in a way that it can be absorbed. So then we've got Mark S. Jones, an attorney that does high-profile cases on both sides. So he has dealt with how do officers deal with this, how does the system deal with this, how do the people in the surrounding areas. He's going to be talking about civil liability. And friends, we need to know that. And there is absolutely nothing dull about that conversation. Let me tell you, you want in on that. We're also going to be talking with, getting to hear from Officer Greg Stevens. So he was responsible for stopping two ISIS-inspired terrorists from committing mass murder in Garland at the Curtis Culwell Center. And he was a 2016 the Medal of Valor recipient from President Barack Obama. So what he learned from that experience had everything to do with training. And he talks about the success of the series of events that happened was specifically because of the dedicated training that was really on his own time to go do, right? We're going to be hearing from Bill Wayburn, the sheriff over in Tarrant County, and we're going to hear from ISIS survivor Colonel James Frawley, talking about the greatest threats of concern today and how we need to be preparing for them. And I tell you, that is going to blow your mind. We do need to be aware of some of these things coming up in a non-hyped up environment. There is just straight up information that we need to be having in the community. And then we'll also be getting the closing words from retired FBI special agent from a supervisory position, Paul Vick. And his heart in this space is just so big. It's one of the reasons that Blue Dragon International Consultants even exists, is recognizing, boy, these officers are taking their lives. They're seeing this and going, there's nothing more I can do, and it's a frustration. And these families are being taken off guard, not even seeing it coming because of the very things we've spoken about today in this interview. So many things that are not being said and being addressed and dealt with, and that's a sad thing. We're also going to be getting a viewpoint from local Dallas mother, Shatamia Taylor. And she was here protesting in the Black Lives Matter march the night that 5 officers were shot in Dallas County, and how those officers threw their bodies on her family and protected them. And now she goes around talking to people about how important it is and how vital it is to have a community relationship with the officers if we're really going to improve this scenario today. So those are some of the topics we're going to be talking about. And August 30th and 31st, you can go to bdic.net to get all the information on the upcoming conferences. This is kicking off a 6-city tour over there at the Birchman Baptist Church, which is a rather large venue. We've got 2,500 seats. Come in and get comfortable in some comfortable chairs. Sit right next to first responders and SWAT, and without feeling awkward. Come in and get to know the community.
Wow, I am so impressed with Ricky. I want to say thank you so much. And before we close this thing out, do you have anything else you can add to this for us before we say that?
Yeah, I just want to add one more plug, and it's really to try to encourage the community to really get involved with your policing. And I'll tell you, when I was toward the end of my law enforcement career, I had one reality that ran through my head every single day, and that was, Tom, I'm either going to die a hero today or I'm going to go home a racist. And that is not something that any of our men and women in blue should have to think or feel. And if we have encouragement coming from the community, and we know that that community is going to rally around us and not automatically indict us because we had to take maybe a life, or we had to do something really difficult that day, and not demonize us, that it's going to really play into the hearts and minds of these officers. And I guarantee you, if the community rallies around these officers, you'll get better policing. It will solve a lot of the problems that we do see when we have bad situations happen at the hands of law enforcement.
I agree with you 100%. And like I said, I am so, this event, I just can't wait to get this thing going and hear all these good speakers and to get to sit next to you guys and honor and respect. You know, my job here is to find the hero in you, you know, and make sure that we let people know what you do and how you do it and how much it means to each and every one. And I'm honest with you, I'm up front, man. This has really, really been a great conversation, and I really want to thank Susan for this time. Susan, give us your phone number so we can get back in touch with you, please.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Please reach out to me. If you're a business owner and you'd like to support this effort, know that you can get started as a Founders Circle member, which means you go with all of our information, all of our marketing for the next 6 cities all across the United States of America, where we're going to be delivering the same type of information with different panel speakers. It is going to be the top of the line in police and community training in this area. So call us at 214-714-0495 to learn how you can participate either on the Founders Circle level or sponsor an officer, or maybe you'd like to have a vendor table set up. By all means, reach out to us. Let me show you how we can connect you to an important event in whatever location that you have. Right now, we're kicking off and inviting the entire North Texas area to this Fort Worth event. And kicking off August 30th through 31st.
Susan, one more thing that I'd like to point out, that this event is happening on a Thursday and Friday. It is really not appropriate for children of young ages, and therefore parents would love for you to be able to drop your kids off, get them on the bus, and then come out and support our first responders, learning how that we can make our community better and safer for everyone. This is Tom Chesser for now, and I'd like to say thank you again, and y'all have a great day.
Thank you for listening, and remember,
By working together, we can make a difference in our city.